I'm going to call roll one more time. I like to make sure, because like I said, today's census thing, and today's the day we drop it. Well, I mean, ever. Like if you weren't here last week and you're not here this week, the reason we do that is because we found that some people don't work and sign up for classes to get financial aid. At least they got to show up for class for a while. The way we're doing it now. Yeah, the sad thing about it is it hurts you guys. What is it else for? And then we'll talk about it. Okay, you know, Brad and Aragon. Still an Aragon. Rich Petro. Barry? Ryan Bolton? Oh, okay. I'll check him then. He doesn't been checked. Okay. Ryan Bolton? Johnny Fiddle? Revino? Joshua Revino? Reading? Robert Thomas? Isn't that awful when you get stereotyped like that? Mackenzie Logan? Is that? Jeremiah. Sitting in the back, man, for the page.
Guys on the
I see. Olivia Roberts. So we don't have Rodriguez. Judge Coleman.
Here.
Mitchell Sayers. Maurice Allison. Jessica Sandoval. Here. Greg Sherman. What happened there? Sure, you got any old hockey guys in your closet back there? It's good. Thanks, Cole. Gary? Do it again, did I do it right? Teakin. Teakin.
Good.
Juanita Finley.
Here.
Okay. Where's that name called?
Brandon Aragon.
I called it. We're here.
Yeah.
Mail.
I love the word, but that's.
I got you. All right. I'm taking care of you. Anybody else? Now, I said, you know, tell them this could be fatal. But, when I called up, you know, this gal was really low. She's asked her, where is she? down. Sarah was, she said, every Sunday we used to go in there and hang out with me. I figured we'd start out with a couple of bad jokes, Most scholars regard human beings in the context of biological change, evolution. We used to figure that the lines of descent run something like this. Somewhere around 5 million to 6 million years ago, the genus of Homo split up from the chimpanzees. There's a DNA. You know how much DNA we share with chimpanzees? I know. Around 98%. Our DNA is produced by chimpanzees. We figure that the hominid family, our once upon a time had somewhere around 30 species. And they all fell by the wayside with us. They were all bipedal, walked on 2 legs. Their brain size started increasing. One of the guys that we were really closely related to was Homo habilis. Homo habilis. Handyman. He was the one that started learning how to use tools. Not with screwdrivers, second drills and stuff like that. You know. Use a rock, like that. There were a number of different ones. We think that about the time that Homo sapiens, that's us, were splitting off, the main competitor. Which means what? You know? It's thinking man. Sometimes you wonder. Our main competitor was probably Neanderthal. Who were the only ones that survived? The only ones that made it. Most people, let me talk about evolution for a minute. Darwin has been accused of saying a lot of things that he did not say. He never said anything about survival of the fittest or any of that stuff. His main premise was the species that is most adaptable is the species that is most likely to survive. Okay? Most adaptable to what? To your surroundings. And there's no doubt about it, of all the species on Earth, we are probably the most adaptable. Some evolutionary changes to dead ends. Generally speaking, genetic changes mostly happen by accident. Most of those are not good accidents. And most of them lead to the end of that genetic change. You see where I'm going with it? They don't work. So they might last a generation, they might last two, but they're going to die off because it doesn't work. It's the ones that work that are the ones that end up being evolutionary changes. There is a bay not too far from Tokyo that has been fished for clams forever. I mean, millennia upon millennia. They don't fish it very much anymore. It's a superstition. Because almost all the clams have what looks like a human face on them. It wasn't always so. But this is a good example of a trait that turns out to be a very survivable trait that will evolve because it's good for the species as a whole. The theory is that one day a fisherman was pulling up a load of clams, and they were all perfectly average clams, except one of them had a face on it. It kind of looked like Uncle Harry. It looked like Uncle Harry. Well, I'm going to throw him in. Well, that was what's called a recessive trait, a trait that wasn't very common. But you know what? There were a couple more. But thanks to him, there were a couple more clams that looked like Uncle Harry. And pretty soon that number started growing and growing and growing. Not because of any physical property that they had that made them better clams or anything, but it was the fishermen didn't want to eat Uncle Harry. And now that whole day, most of the clams that day look like Uncle Harry. That's the way evolution works most of the time. So a lot of the changes, probably including Homo habilis and Neanderthal, ended up being dead ends for some reason or the other. Now, before I go any further, let me make sure that you heard what I said last week. A lot of what we're going to do in here is speculation. We are not sure. Even I wasn't alive now. No other goal that I had. And so, what we do is we're going to base what we think we know on archaeological, DNA, carbon-14 dating, all of those things, and we're going to come up with our best educated guess. We're going to be wrong? Yeah, sometimes we're going to be wrong. But we will hang on to that theory until a better one comes along, because that's the way science works. Make sense? Homo sapiens are the first ones to really start creating homes in every different kind of environmental niche that you find. Culture. We're talking about culture. What's culture? It's a way of life. It's kind of broad.
Tradition?
Yeah, but I mean, what do we share? We share language. We share ethics and mores and belief systems and all of that. Language. The two greatest effects on culture, on society, when we get into society, these are societies yet, really, are going to be climate and geography. I'll give you an example now. There are two contemporary societies back in way back. They're two of the first formal societies that we have. One of them is in Egypt, and one of them is in Mesopotamia, Fertile Crescent, today's Iran, Iraq. Most people believe that the first religions with the first gods and goddesses and whatnot. And by the way, most of the first religions were goddesses. They were very materialistic. We'll talk about how that changed. Anyway, most people feel that the reason we came up with our first gods and our first religions was to explain natural phenomena. Why did the sun go up? Why did the sun go down? Why did it rain? Why didn't it rain? Why did the seasons change? Yeah, let's look at these first two very early civilizations. And guys, when I'm talking about Egypt, I'm not talking about the third dynasties and stuff like that. I'm talking about really early Egypt. When they were in existence pretty much along with Mesopotamia, with Ur and Sumer, places like that.
Salmon, not Sumer, Salmon.
And is it Salmar over there?
Salmon, yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with Lorene because she's from there. What are you not from Salmar?
No, I'm not from Salmon, but I have been.
Salmar, huh?
Yeah.
You guys teach me something every day? Every day. Yeah. Thank you. Let's look at their early religion. Maybe we can figure out something. Early religions were a tool to try and understand nature. If you go to the Nile Valley, the Nile Delta, things are good. Very, very fertile. The weather is very dependable. Every spring, Nile floods, but not bad floods, and it washes down all that lovely fertile silt into the delta so that we can plant crops. In the summertime, and living is easy. Life is good. When we go over to Somar, places like that, things ain't so good, huh? The weather's not as predictable. There's not much rain. It's hard to grow crops. It's tough. Now let's look at religions. We look at Egyptian religions, Egypt's religions, early religions. And you know what? They're pretty easygoing guys. We got a shot of an afterlife. We ain't going to heaven unless we're Pharaoh, but we got a shot of an afterlife. Things are going to be good. Those guys are easy to get along with. Then we go over to Somar and Ur. Is Ur right? And what do we find? We find a bunch of mean, spirited guys. A bunch of gods running around with bad attitudes and pointed sticks. You had something to do with climate environment? Sure. So as we look at history, we're going to be talking about different cultures and different belief systems and all of that. And most of the time we can blame it on geography and just throw this out. Let's do it through weather and climate. Yeah, weather's what it's doing today. Climate's what it's used to be. Everybody happy with that? So here we are. We finally got the species known as Homo sapiens or thinking man. And we're going to slowly see some developments. Technology. What do you think of when you think of technology today? Yeah, the ones, iPad, all that stuff, right? But remember, once upon a time, laying a tree over it and rolling something on it was really advanced technology. Taking a rock, and tying it to a stick so I could use it as a hammer and get the mechanical advantage of the However, was highly advanced technology. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying evolving technology. We're also going to see eventually the idea of contemplation, trying to figure out art, religion, mention, ritual, meaning of life. Why are we here? Why are we here? And of course, this is all a matter of adaptation. Are we the most adaptable species on the planet? You bet we are. Let's say that they're right. We're in for another ice age. The animals that start growing heavier fur and all of that, we're going to grow heavier fur? No, what are we going to do?
Show the animals with the heavier fur and jackets.
Well, I was thinking of something a little less sad. Yeah, you're on the right track, Matt. We're going to build more fireplaces, right? That's the ability we have, is the ability to jump into another solution. And that's what makes us most adaptable. The first guys, and we're talking about the first, who knows, let's call it 150,000 years of existence. It was the Paleolithic period. Or the Old Stone Age. What were we doing? Trying to stay alive. That was about it. We weren't doing much else. We were hunter-gatherers. We were running around chasing the woolly mammoth, and eating nuts and berries, living in whatever cave was handy. We were very nomadic. And we were living in very, very small clans. We were all blood related. Whether it got cold, we moved south. Whether it got warm, we moved north. We followed the food supplies. And we did that for probably the first 150,000 years or more of our existence. Sounds like a rough way to live. Hey, we still have some hunter gatherers around. Not very many. And we'll talk about that. Somewhere around 11,000 years ago, we had the most shocking, the most world-changing event, revolution we have had in the history of mankind. When we go into the Neolithic era, or the New Stone Age, and we see the Neolithic Revolution, sometimes called the Agricultural Revolution. What's that all about? Well, we slowly settled down, and we learned how to do some things. We learned how to plant crops. We became farmers. We learned to domesticate animals. Because we learned little puppies or little kids. Some to eat. Yeah. Originally, some to eat. That way we didn't have to be chasing after them. So now we're growing crops, and we've got an animal food supply under our own control. We can harvest. We don't have to move around. Now, this didn't happen overnight. In the great scheme of things, it happened overnight. But it took a few thousand. But you know, out of 150,000 years, it's a couple of thousand, not much. Good for everybody. Just about everything. Just I don't know. It's gonna make a difference. But it's gonna make a difference. It's gonna make a difference. It's gonna make a difference. Everything. You guys moved the last years. Ain't it fun? I was 3 times in 2 years to the phone. Moving takes a lot of time and effort. One of the things I learned in all those years in the radio business, you don't have to stay any place very long. You don't get a bunch of stuff. You make life easy. You know, I always tell the smartest guys, if he's a new guy at the radio station, you tell him he's smart enough, if he brings a small truck. That means he's smart enough not to acquire a whole bunch of stuff. So after the Neolithic Revolution, some things are going to start happening that are really going to change society. And most of them going to have to do with not moving around. Being able to settle out, being able to put down some roots. Some of them are also going to have to do with a more guaranteed food supply. People are going to be healthier. So that's really where our story is going to start. I talked about those hundreds of thousands of years. Basically, the first city we worked until about 3,500 BC. That's going to change everything. Just a few notes about dates. The standard way that we used to designate dates was BC and AD, which stood for before Christ and after, year of our Lord. Most people don't do that anymore because it's so politically incorrect. And old historians or something, I don't know. The new one is BCE for before the Common Era, and CE for Common Era. I'll shift back and forth because you can't teach an analog tricks.
What was that first one?
BC and AD.
Yeah.
And then BCE before the Common Era, and CE, which is Common Era. I mean, that's just in the Western world. We got China, they started dating they started a new calendar every time there was a new reign. Muslim calendar, year 1 marks the immigration of Medina. It's actually 1602. France, for a while, they went back to year 1 when they did the French Revolution. There's all kinds of different ones. But since we seem to be in Pueblo, Colorado, USA, we will use BCE and CE or BC and AD. Are we happy with that? Questions so far? Okay. I mentioned that there are still some hunter-gatherer cultures on Earth. They are really few and far between. Certainly there are a few in Australia. There are a few scattered around through Africa, South America.
Is the land formations look probably a lot different than what it looks today?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Anybody familiar with this guy? Must be Monday, huh? The Pangea theory? That's the theory, and it's pretty much accepted that all of the continents were once one continent. And they all shifted. And I'm telling you, if you look at a map of the world, it's pretty obvious. It really is, you know. The Horn of Africa look really nice here, and all of that stuff. And another thing is that climate change every time. So we have to assume that things may be worthwhile, and sometimes it doesn't take long. Any guys ever been to Chocolate? Oh, you must know. It's down in north central New Mexico, and it is the center of, and we'll talk about them, the culture we call the Salt. The same guys that settled Mesa River. Well, Mesa River is a suburb. And if you go down there, you are going to find something interesting. If you're lucky enough to have people you work with over there, Georgetown, look up here, you can do that. Tell her I said hi and listen. She was more about it. But there's an arroyo down there, and it's pretty good size. It's probably 35, 40 feet deep, 150 feet wide. That's pretty good size. Wasn't there 60 years. And this one turns out to be a man-made one, or maybe a cow. About 60 years ago, some of the Navajos down there moved some of their cattle to the grazing ground. And when they did that, it caused erosion. And that whole arroyo showed up within 60 years after. If you go down the Chaco Canyon, here was one of the most advanced civilizations in the world 1,000 years ago. Why? Buddy, build all of this up here in the middle of this heat and desert. We have to assume that these climates change. But at any rate, that's not the only thing. The thing is that hunter-gatherer lifestyle stuff. It's probably easier as far as if you don't have very many people, it's easier. But as you start getting more and more people, you get stuck. Let's go back to the second European invasion of the New World, of the Americas. We're pretty sure the first was about 1000 AD with the Vikings. The second was Chris Columbus and all the guys that followed him. When those guys started showing up on the East Coast, they weren't encountering a bunch of people running around in loincloths and living in teepees. These guys were living in houses. The only place you found the hunter-gatherer was out here in the Great Plains, the Cheyenne, and the Arapaho, and the Comanche, Sioux. But along the coast and places like that, these guys were living in houses.
They didn't need to move anymore.
Yeah, they had all the natural raw materials they needed, so they didn't have to move. So they made that Neolithic revolution who knows how long ago. We don't know. It was just the people in the flag states who didn't make that transition right on. They had to. You get down the Ohio Valley, you got 40 acres. Back when we were homesteading, some places you could homestead as much as a section of land, which is a square mile. And most people didn't want it. They wanted a quarter section, or an eighth of a section. They didn't want it too much. It's a land spur. There's a lot of cattle. You come out here, how much is a section? Almost enough to starve to death out. So the people here in this area were hunter-gatherers until the white man pretty much invaded the place and took it over. But the thing is that being a hunter-gatherer is kind of rough. I think it's psychological probably a lot easier. But it's just kind of rough because you gotta get every morning to move. Actually, we started seeing our species migrate out of Africa. We're pretty sure now that our species started in Africa. Somewhere a long time before the Neolithic Revolution. 300,000. We're not sure. We find conflicting evidence, find older evidence. But there's no doubt that Africa was home to the human revolution when Homo sapiens ended up as the dominant species and the rest of them died out. They were starting to learn how to hunt and fish instead of scavenging. It looks as though they were even learning how to trade. One of the things we're going to find that's really a key element to cultures moving around, people moving around, is trade. That's not going to happen until we start specializing in labor. But that's going to happen fairly early on. They start migrating out of Africa, and they end up pretty much every place on Earth. Now let's get a little. I think we talked about it anyway. We talked about the postal point in here. The lowest point. So you know about that. It's generally accepted that the invasion into the Americas happened across that land bridge that we were talking about, because the ice age dropping down and all that stuff, right? But most people today are willing to accept the possibility that they also came across the land. They didn't set off and sail. They didn't even know they were outside of land. It was ice. They thought it was land. But most people are willing to accept that now. What really happened? But it's an educated guess, right? It's the best guess we got. So, people who got a lot more at stake are making a lot harder stuff. They have a tendency to be, really know this is the way it was. But I know that it could have gone any number of different ways. One of the things that we start seeing, somewhere around 20,000 years ago, cave paintings, stuff like that. Communication, written communication. This is a big deal. It wasn't a big deal for them. Why not? Because when they wanted to communicate, they go, "Hey, Jack, come here, I have something to tell you." It's kind of hard to do that over thousands of years. When I teach English comp, I tell everybody the first day, you ever stop to think that writing is an unnatural act? It's not natural to write. Because how do we communicate? We talk. Writing is a substitute for communicating, for the best way that we know to communicate. We write in order to cover distances and to cover time. Those are the only two reasons that we write. But don't go tell your comp teachers I said that. They'll all gang up on you and loud.
Tell me about it.
We talked about new technologies. Let's talk about a big change in culture now. I mentioned that most of the early religions were matriarchal. And indeed, most of the early societies, and I put culture around of societies because really we're talking about small clans, were matriarchal. Why do you suppose? What can ladies do? Let's just leave it at have babies. Yeah, have babies. They have the ability to reproduce. And we find in so many of these early cultures a reference to Mother Earth. And the mother goddesses we find representations of, they usually show really wide hips, large breasts. Most of the time they're pregnant. The woman had a very, very special place in society. How did this thing all get reversed? And we're struggling now to turn it back around, just so you guys, you lady guys, get a fair shake. We're getting pretty good at it. You see how we go. What happened to change? All of a sudden, patriarchal society. Secondary role. Take some guesses. What do you think? They didn't know that. Probably not. There's one right there. Not only strength, not only build there. So mighty drag on. And like woman drag on, whatever. Strength definitely had something to do with it. Probably had a lot to do with it. There was a natural tendency. Women, the thing about our species is we're about the only species around that hangs on to its young for as long as we do. So maybe a little longer than it should. Well, we don't even consider people ready to go out on their own until they're 18 years old. Look at the rest of the species out there. And a lot of times they're gone as soon as they're born.
What's the opposite?
What's
the opposite? It won't be like here in the United States, some of them they move when they are 18, some of them they have to stay.
Oh, some of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree.
I mean, if they move out, they would be maybe some.
Yeah, I agree there. But I'm talking about different species, like I'm trying to think of one or two. The short snake, the As soon as they're born, they're out of the nest. Whichever gay or so. Turtles? Are turtles like that?
Yeah, they go in the mound, they hatch, they hit the water, that's all.
These are pretty harsh. No.
But, shouldn't that be attributed to the life expectancy or lifespan?
What most people attribute it to is the fact that we are thinking man, and it takes us, because our brain capacity is so large, it takes us that long to develop. That's what most theorists are saying. But anyways, it makes sense because we have such a long period of needing nurture that the women would be the ones to nurture. They're the ones to nurse everything else. And the guys are all like, oh, they're more apt to go out and kill a woolly mammoth, right? You know, put on a barbecue and try over the next door after you do it. I truly believe barbecue is like this male thing from prehistoric. I really do. Yeah. Yeah. All rock and maybe more fire, early on regulation. As we develop into an agricultural society, we find that men quite frequently are responsible for the planting of the crops. Not always, but quite frequently. But the rest of the time, the crops are the women's value, and the men are busy on hunting. That might be one of the reasons why we tended to a patriarchal society. Remember I told you that when you're out running around and got to move every day or every other day or every week, you have a tendency not to gather property. You don't gather up a lot of stuff because you don't want to have to move a lot of stuff. When I start living in a permanent location, guess what, guys? I'm going to settle down. I'm going to start getting stuff. George Carlin, my stuff. Talk about it on the road. Moved to a hotel for a week, but he had to have stuff. And then he got home. My stuff. So the stuff means something to you. And we're getting to the point where, we understand life cycles, we understand death and birth, to a certain extent. We probably figure that we're going to die. But before we die, maybe we're going to have offspring. We have sons. And we want them to have our stuff. Always so far. We want to make darn sure they're our sons. See where I'm going with this? So all of a sudden, men, because they're stronger, started imposing all of these monogamous rules and everything on the women. They don't have to worry about it. But the women, by God, better be monogamous. Because if they're not, some kid that's not mine might get my stuff. Most anthropologists think that that's where the big swing was. The biggest reason for the swing from matriarchal to patriarchal society. So now we're not moving around anymore. We're settling down. One of the things that's going to happen, like I said, health's going to get better because our food supply is going to get better. And you know what that's going to mean? That's going to mean longer life expectancy, more babies are going to live, and we're going to see population growth. We're talking about camping in here. I always have to just stop, when I start like 4 classes in 2 days, I'm not sure what I told some guys. Talk about camping. Anybody camping?
Last time was out by Lake Louise.
What else?
We just camped up in Cotopaxi for a big portion. We've been out about 6 times.
Somebody like me, you camp out in the middle of nowhere. To me, that's what camping's all about. Trying to get all those freedoms there. I've got places I camp where I know there ain't anybody around for 25, 30 miles. That's as close to freedom as I can get. Sit up all night, play the band, play the guitar, sing, no one can rock that. I can do anything I want. Almost anything. I gotta take care of the land. No starting range fires or anything like that. Get up in the morning, crawl on the bed, when God gave me, scratch wherever I want. So we start the coffee pot, and then we'll wipe this one down. We're gonna let you around 4 on Thursday. I do? Nice. And then, somebody pulls up next to me. There kind of goes a lot of the street stuff. Because I have to take them into consideration, and they have to take me into consideration. So we sit around and we cut some deals, We don't run that generator after 9 o'clock. I won't sing after 10. A few deals, it's okay. But then more and more people move in. We got to have more rules. We can't run anymore. We got more rules than we do for risk game. With risk versus a lot of rules. So see where we're going. All of a sudden, our population is growing. We're settled down. We got more and more people going in. So pretty soon we have to start worrying about some of the voluntary form of government. This is where we start seeing the first forms of a city state. They're pretty loose at first, but they're going to grow. And they're going to grow until they ultimately become, at least for us, what they are today, a modern nation state. With a fixed boundary, and the people within the fixed boundary, for the most part, and shared culture, shared belief system, shared Is that the end? Most people don't think so. A lot of futurists, which are guys who get paid for sitting around making up this math on the wall. Actually, some of them are really sharp. A lot of futurists today are saying that, you know what? The cities or the nation state may be on its way out. I've heard a lot of them say what's going to replace it. But, I don't know, to me, if the nation state's out, maybe the corporate state, not much like that. Then maybe don't think of it. The nation state, as we know it, is a pretty new idea. 19th century, 1800s. That's really when the final formation of the ideas of the nation state came about. Been playing with it for about 20 years, 30 years. But can you see how not just the fact that we're not moving around anymore, but But the fact that we are settling down is going to cause us to change all kinds of things in our culture. Does that make sense? That's what's going to happen. Like I said, we start seeing cave paintings, the first things we see. And we're not sure. Are they just art? I'll say that's okay. I should say just art. Are they art? Or are they more? Are they some form of communication? Story behind. Something like that. If you've seen representations of some of these, especially the ones that they find in trance, things like that, it's 20,000 years old. Of course. Wow. Can we carry one further? Are they a form of communication other than just a story? Maybe. One of the things we find in an awful lot of belief systems that are based on nature is that each person is connected to a different animal. Many of you have heard this, the tribe love. How many of you guys have heard about it? You guys wolves? No? Wolves and eagles are supposed to live. I love you. You look at that tradition. So maybe these were attempts at an expression of who I am.
But they ever looked at it as an expression of religion?
Hardly, maybe. We don't know. At least we're willing to go. Oh. I told you the story about the depression in front of the dwelling houses in England. We speculate. We do our best. Yeah, we think this is going to be. That's okay. It's okay. That's what history is all about. We refine our knowledge and we get closer and closer to the facts. Do we ever absolutely get the facts? Even in recent history, not very often. There are going to be 2, 3, 4 versions of whatever happened. Today, we're pretty sure of most things because, most any events of historic significance are being filmed. But how easy is it anymore to modify a film? There's no statement in history that makes you direct history. And throughout history, we know that's true. When we talk about Karl Marx, I bet you didn't expect to talk about Groucho. Donald Groucho? No. Ever read his biography? You'll laugh till you cry. You know the little thing they put in front?